Hi everybody, this time I thought I would share a read aloud for all the boys and girls that are listening, but also a little bit for the grown-ups. So I discovered this very cool Usborne very first reading set that we ordered that comes with, I think about, I can't even remember how many, quite a few books though. It comes with quite a lot of books in it. And there are reading books that begin at an earlier reading level, early readers, and they continue to get progressively a little more challenging as it goes up through the sets. And one thing that I didn't realize this set had, which is very, very exciting, is some guidance for parents and for grown-ups who are reading with children on ways that you can use these books with them. So I thought I would share one. This is the very first book in the set. So it is one of the more simple reading books. It's book one. It's called Pirate Pat by Mary McKinnon, and it's illustrated by Mike and Carl Gordon. And this book is actually great because even a younger child like Dalton's age, 2 years old, can actually contribute with reading this story with you, which is very fun. And so we found ways for both Lydia and Dalton at their different ages to be able to read this story along. So if you have kids at different ages, you can give everybody a part and they can contribute to reading too and reading along with you. So right in the very beginning, the book tells you on page 2 how the book works. So the story of Pirate Pat has been written for you to read with your child. You get to take turns to read. So there are words for you to read or for an older child to read. And then there are words for your child to read or younger child to read that are bigger. You'll notice they're bold. They are written in a different type font that's a little bit easier for a child to read. You notice the A is in a format that children are more familiar with. And it also gives you the guidance that you don't have to finish the story in one session. If it's getting too long or your child is feeling tired, you could mark the page, put a bookmark in, and you could come back to it. And at the end of the story, we'll take a look when we get to the end. There's actually some ways to extend the story and do a little bit of comprehension work and some word work at the end, which is very exciting. Some things that we do in the classroom when we're reading a book that you could do at home. So Pirate Pat. The night was cold, the sky was black, the window rattled, tap, tap, tap. And for a younger child, I would have them put their finger right in the book, tap, tap, tap. There's someone there, I'm sure of it. Sam, do stop barking. Sit, Sam, sit. So you'll notice some rhyming is coming in to help a child recognize the pattern, so that as they're working to read these other words, they're able to recognize the pattern. And a younger child, you could help them and they could copy along and follow with their finger as well. There's also some dialogue happening here. So for our first graders and for children moving into a little bit more independent reading, recognizing dialogue is something that we work on, looking for punctuation and how a character might be talking, looking for sentences that are carrying across a line onto the next line to know that we're continuing to talk. Those are things that we watch for. So there's lots of opportunity even with this very first book in the series. Well, we were scared, but not our Gran. She went to look. It is a man. And these are all simple words. There's CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant. Those are some of the first words that children tend to learn. There are what we call snap words or tricky words that children learn. It is a, some of those basic foundational words that we would teach in the very beginning, words that we see a lot when we're reading and writing. A tattered coat, a huge black hat. Look, it's a pirate. I am Pat. So here, even our youngest readers get an opportunity to explore some dialogue. Noticing a speech bubble here. They get to become a character. They could create a voice here. Maybe they could make their own pirate voice. I am Pat, and give him a voice. Really getting to engage with the story. Pat hunted in his heavy pack. What has he found? It is a map. You'll notice there's opportunity for different punctuation here. So if you have a higher reader who is beginning to read this side of the book, then you might be having them watch for that punctuation, and notice that here we're going to read a little differently than if we just see a period or an exclamation. We're going to read it in a questioning tone. And if you're reading it, you might even make note of that with your voice and talking to your child. "But that's my home," says Gran. "Look, lad, you can't just dig here." Pat is sad. So using the picture to help, you can see that Pat is sad. Dalton was able to read this without any support the first time because he could look and see that Pat already looked sad. You might have a child that says Pat is mad or Pat is upset, and you could work with them to see that word sad there and recognize that he is sad. He starts to frown. "Oh, this looks bad." Gran says, "I mean it. Pat is mad." Now you can see his cheeks turning red. His eyebrows are curling down. He is mad. You might even go back and compare what his mad face looks like and his sad face and how they are a little different. But does he listen? Not a bit. Now look at him. Pat in a pit. Now with my first grade friends, we would definitely stop here and take a look at these two words that look so similar but have something a little different happening. Pat and pit. We can see our short vowel sound has changed in the middle. Pat, pit. We might even notice the snap words inside, at and it. And think about maybe some other words we could create using those word parts, at and it. A bang, a clang, what has he hit? A treasure chest. Pat shouts, "I did it!" Well done, Pirate Pat. Pat, pat, pat. So here's an opportunity for even your younger child to start moving around the page a little. Pat, pat, pat. They might give a different voice to each of these characters, and notice where that speech bubble is pointing. Every character might have their own voice as you're going through. Now at the end of the story, there are some puzzles that let you do some comprehension with the story. So puzzle number 1 says to look at the pictures together and try retelling the story. So you could look at these pictures, there are 6 pictures here, and try to retell the story. What was happening first and next? What was happening third, fourth, fifth, and at the end, 6th? And then why don't you talk about what they might all do next? Once they found that treasure at the end, what might they go do with it? Make some predictions of what the family might do. Maybe even talk about what you might do if you found a treasure like Pat and Granny and the rest of the characters found. What would you do with a treasure? Puzzle 2 says choose the right word for each picture. Now this one I really like. So if we look at our first picture, we have 2 words here. Sam and sad. So choose the right word for this picture. They're both great words, but this is Sam. 2, man and map. 2 great words. Again, read both words. Which one makes the most sense? Which one fits? Pan and Pat. With some of our first grade readers, we might even think about noticing this uppercase letter, knowing that he's a person with a name, and a name would have an uppercase letter, so we're looking for that uppercase P for Pat. Pit and sit, both have that it in there. That snap word it, but which word is the word that makes the most sense? And the last puzzle in here is puzzle number 3. Find the words that rhyme. The first pair has already been linked as an example, so you can see man and pan. So there are some different ways you can talk with a child about doing this depending on how they are doing with their rhyming. If they're new to rhyming or if they've been rhyming for a long time, if these words are new to them or if they're words that they've seen before. So if you look at man and pan, we might start by actually just reading through all the word choices. If your child isn't reading these words yet, you might read through them so they can hear the sounds and they can listen for the rhymes. They may be at a stage where they're listening for rhyming sounds. But if they're reading the rhyming words, you can have them touch and read each word first That will help them both listen and look at the words. They might be noticing parts that look the same at the end. We can look for parts that are the same at the end for our rhyming words. We can also have a conversation along with our rhyming words about words that look the same at the end and sound the same at the end. Sometimes there are rhyming words that look different at the end but have the same sound. Here, all of our words that rhyme do have the same part, the same word part at the end. Man and pan, pit and sit, they both have the it. Map and tap have the ap part. Sad and mad have the ad. If you wanted to take it a step further, you could maybe have them write these words down next to each other and maybe come up with a third word to add to their list that they can create. If they're at a point where they're ready to add some more rhyming words, maybe they write man, pan, and they come up with one more word. Maybe they could add the word tan. So you could have them make a list and write their own words down. Doing that writing practice would be great extra practice with word work as well. And you'll see that the answers to the puzzles are right inside of here as well. So if you weren't sure, this is a pretty interesting way to share a story. So there are some guidance notes. So I wanted to share with you because I know that you won't have these books with you, but this is a great process to use when you're reading any story with a child. So going through and finding some words that you're going to read. Maybe this is called a seesaw read in our classroom. You read one page, the child reads the next page, or if they're reading with a partner, they read one page, their partner reads the next page. We seesaw back and forth. That's one way to read a story. Doing something at the end. You could do something like going through and doing just a picture walk at the beginning or the end, going through and looking at the pictures and telling the story again, or even before starting the story, going through and trying to make some predictions about what's going to happen in the story. You could also pull out some words. If it's a rhyming story, you can pull out some of those rhyming words and do a match of your own. You could write them down, you could cut them out, mix them up, and play a matching game. Now, here's some great guiding questions that can be used with any story. Thinking about why it's important to read, building confidence in reading, stamina, being able to read for longer, being able to read independently for longer, taking part in an exciting story, being able to use lots of words in a story, starting out with a smaller amount and building up to more and more. Good times to read are when you're really feeling relaxed, you're not too tired, there's not a lot of distractions. When you're feeling like you're getting exhausted or your child's getting exhausted, it's not the best time to read. So go ahead and stop then. Come back to it when you're feeling ready for it and when your child's ready for it. If your child gets stuck, don't just read that word to them, but remind them to go try a strategy. We have a lot of great strategies we can use when we're stuck on a word. We can try things like looking at the picture. We can try thinking about what makes the most sense. What word would make the most sense? What's happening in the story? What do we already know about the story? What might be coming next? Starting to think outside of just looking at the word. Also thinking about what are the parts that we see. I am moving students away from looking at every sound each letter makes. We really want to be looking for parts that we know. So in the words that we're reading, we don't need to break down every single sound of a letter. We need to be looking for parts that we know. A lot of times our words are going to have a whole part that we recognize, or they might be a word that reminds us of a word that we already know. So think about another word that you know that kind of looks the same. And if you know another word that looks the same, you could use that to help. So if you're trying to if you're trying to read a word like cookie and you know the word look, then you already have the beginning part, cook, and you just have to think of that vowel team at the end. So trying to use a word that you know to help you solve words that you don't know is really helpful as well. Sometimes just jumping back to the beginning of the sentence and reading it smooth again and can give you that running start of thinking of what sounds like it's coming next. That can help solve as well. Don't forget to give a lot of praise and encouragement. Reading is really hard when you're getting started out. It can be really tiring on the brain. It can be really hard to think through all those things that you might know, all those strategies, and to come back to all that prior knowledge that you have of things that you've seen and read and talked about. So it can be challenging. It can feel a little bit stressful when you're getting started in reading. So giving that praise and encouragement is really helpful, because I think our kiddos are always doing their best. They really are trying. And when you've finished, now what do you do? So we never ever want to just close a book when we're done. We always want to do something. So we might go back and read the story again. We might go back and find our favorite part. We might have a whole talk about the book. What did you like about it? We might talk about the characters. What do you think they're going to do next? What do you think they could have done differently? What would happen if one part of this story was different? What if Pirate Pat hadn't found that treasure? What would be different about our story? So then when you're feeling like your child has really kind of mastered that story, or they're ready to move on from it, give them a little bit trickier one to try, or give them something new to try. And if you're feeling like they're not quite ready for that one, work together on it, or move back to one that's feeling more comfortable. So those are just some strategies that can help when you're reading at home. And if you'd like any more resources or support or guidance, just let me know. I have lots of great ideas that I can share with you for anybody who is interested. So I hope you enjoyed Pirate Pat, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.